And joining us, former Tory MEP David Campbell-Bannerman, who says Boris Johnson has made an honest, sincere apology and it is time to move on. But Lobby Akinlola, whose dad died from COVID-19, says we can't move on when the man who lied is still in power. Now, you heard what Paul was saying there. And there are other people this morning, viewers watching the programme, that put the point that it was a different climate. You know, back then, despite that sort of very harsh little bit of tape we saw from the same time of him telling everybody else to stay at home, you know, people were trying to get their head round rules. It was a new situation. Business meetings, was it a business meeting, was it not? All of that was confusing. He said, yes, I did wrong. He's paid his fine. What else can he do? Because sadly, he can't bring your father back or give you that time back, or indeed anybody else who's had to go through that. Do you understand that argument?
Personally, I don't understand that argument. I think there's clearly something he can do. I believe the Prime Minister can resign. And I think there's good reason for that, because whilst we say it's a different climate and I think people were unsure of the rules, it was his duty to make it clear what the rules were. It was his duty to set an example for the country, and he didn't do that. And that's been made clear now. And I think it seems like in every other walk of life, if someone is unable to complete their duty, we remove them from the duty and we ask someone else to take that place, because, you know, we need to make sure things work as they're supposed to. And I don't understand why the highest office in this country seems exempt from that.
It's difficult to challenge that, isn't it, David?
Well, no apology is going to really satisfy anyone who suffered your loss. And, you know, you lost your father and that was terrible. And COVID is a terrible thing. I think the question is, do we move on from here? I think it's important we do. I mean, what was happening at the time? You mentioned it, Adil. You know, the Prime Minister nearly died the month before of COVID. You know, what were these people doing in this office? You know, unusually thousands of people working in an office. No one else was allowed to. They were working on the vaccine programme, which has saved countless lives around the world, 2 billion plus doses. They were working on PPE that your father should have had and should have protected his life.
But yeah, but look, I mean, hospital staff were saving lives.
Doing that as well.
They weren't having a drink in the ward afterwards, were they? I mean, well, you know, teachers were you know, were tutoring people from over Zoom, or some of the schools were still open. They weren't having parties. I mean,
there's no excuse.
Why is that even a justification?
OK, when you say there's no excuse, but Lobby's specific point that it's the highest office in the land, and it's held by a rule breaker, someone who broke the rules that he made, and that just can't be tolerated.
Well, the Prime Minister, what he said was he was advised that there hadn't been that law breaking. That's what he said in Parliament. That's important. I mean, look, there's only one Prime Minister and there's hundreds and thousands of officials and advisors. I'm sorry, I don't think he was well advised. And, you know, people have lost their jobs over this, quite rightly, because they were breaking the rules, some of these officials and advisors. And I think he was put in a very difficult position. And he has apologised. He hasn't tried to sort of ignore it or gloss over it. He's apologised directly.
Well, he did say he didn't do it several times in the Commons first.
Well, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, it was an apology, definitely fulsome, definitely lots of them yesterday and before, last week. But it didn't come straight away. You know, he first of all said, well, no, there were no rules.
As he said yesterday, you know, he wasn't aware that this was an offence. And, of course, you know, it's quite right. The police have an independent investigation, which is what they're doing. But I think we have to say, you know, are there more important things going on now? You know, there will be a full inquiry into this, and quite rightly, and there will be some harsh lessons from this. But, you know, we are now dealing with a wounded madman in Putin, who the CIA are talking about may well use battlefield nuclear weapons, who may use chemical weapons. Right. That's going on. Well, the whole Ukraine crisis.
So not the time to change Prime Minister. Lobby, what do you say to that?
There will be a full inquiry. Lobby, you lost your father. There's lots of people at home right now in your position. How do you feel today, 2 years on from the midst of the peak of the pandemic, seeing what's going on in Parliament? How do you feel?
I think it's difficult because, you know, the Prime Minister is asking us to move on and, you know, start to address more important issues that are taking place currently. And I think it's quite difficult to move on, like I said, when the person who you feel betrayed you is on the news every day saying at first that he didn't and then later on being like he's sorry. But it seems that apologies only come after investigation by Sue Gray, civil servant, and then the police. So it rings a little bit less sincere. And personally, I think I agree that we do have pressing matters to address right now. There's a war in Ukraine, there's the cost of living crisis. But I don't understand why the country's been asked to believe that the Prime Minister is the man to take us through this, because COVID was a crisis as well and continues to be. People are still dying. And he was the captain of the ship. And while the ship was burning, he was in his private quarters having cheese and wine. So why would he get back on that boat?
We will have to leave it there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Lobby. I don't know what to say to you. There's so many people in your position right now, and our deepest condolences to you, and our thoughts are with you, Lobby Akinola. And David Campbell-Bannerman, thanks for joining us as well this morning. It's
continued support with dealing with your loss.
Thank you.
It's very tough. Thank you very much indeed.